It's been a while, I know. It's been actually 3 months since my last video. I got a full-time job soon after I had posted that previous video, and I've been balancing that with my previous job that I had. My previous job, I've been having keeping that part-time and working on the weekends. So it's been difficult finding time and honestly motivation too, being tired and all I want to use the one day I tend to have off, Sunday, uh, to relax. But I wanted to get back on this, especially since there's a worrisome trend that I've been noticing recently. And on this channel, I don't tend to criticize the left as much. There's obviously the left does do wrong things. Everyone does. There's people who do dumb stuff. I did post stuff against Hillary Clinton, and I was very much so against her. Though, to be fair, she really can't be considered part of the left. She's really center right. But regardless, I criticize Trump and the right a lot more than I criticize the left. And this is obviously because I'm a leftist, I'm a liberal. And so I tend to agree with most things the left does, and I still think to this day that they're pretty much right on almost everything. However, to now I can start filling that quota of of mandatory left attacking videos because they are actually genuinely doing something stupid recently. So there was the protests in Berkeley of the Milo Yiannopoulos event, and I don't believe there's anything wrong with protesting. Now, Young Turks actually did a very good video on this where they talked about why they don't want people to be protesting Milo Yiannopoulos, and their reasoning basically is because protesting him gives him that crowd. And that's what he wants to see because opposition's better than nothing. When you literally just no one's listening to you, you get demotivated and your message isn't going anywhere. But when you have a large group of people actively fighting against you, in some ways your message is actually reaching people, even if it's negative. Negative press is better than no press. In fact, negative press is good press. So that's their logic, and I do agree with that. And this is kind of where I believe that this is a complicated issue because a lot of people got mad at them, and a lot of people are generally getting mad at a lot of left figures for arguing this because they're saying that what are we supposed to do? Just not oppose, fascist neo Nazis. And while it might be a little bit much to say Milo Yiannopoulos and these people are neo-Nazis. They certainly are going in that direction, so it's not too much. But they're not quite neo-Nazis yet. And Milo Yiannopoulos is more of a professional troll than anything else. He's just doing stuff for the fame. He has no real agenda, and he's not particularly smart. So he's not going to be the leader of movements, even if he gets these book deals and he does get his voice out there. He doesn't really have that kind of vision, I don't believe, to lead major movements to actually affect policy. It's just happy convenience for him that somebody in power, Trump, who's a man-child, will listen to anyone who makes him feel good. So at that point, he actually could do damage because as long as Trump sees this guy who got a book deal is for him, he's going to be like, that's my guy right there. Him right there. And then he might start listening to him. It's really more of a Trump problem than it is a Milo Yiannopoulos problem, but still. So, yeah, people are getting mad about that. And there's been a kind of a debate recently over how the left should be approaching just, what's been going on recently. And the thing is, the worrisome trend that's been coming on is really, it's called, people have been using the term punch a Nazi, which, basically is just talking about having a militant approach to dealing with the Nazis the alt-right and Trump. And I don't believe that this is the right approach. And there's several reasons for this, but I'm going to get what I feel is the least good argument out of the way first, the moral argument. You can't really fight fire with fire in this case because when we attack them, when we literally punch Spicer and people like him in the face, they get an argument to turn to their followers and say, hey, look, they're attacking us. Now, this is the same thing, and it's not right, but let me go into the logic of that. In this, it's the same reason why our constant bombing of Muslim countries doesn't stop terrorism, it creates more terrorism. Because you continue these attacks and these attacks, and then those acts of violence can then be used to recruit more to that cause, because they can then use those acts of violence to convince people that they are, in fact, the victim. And victims in the public eye tend to be right. When you're being oppressed, it doesn't really matter about the actual arguments being used in those situations. People tend to view the oppressed in a more positive light than the people, or let me say, I'm saying using oppressed in quotations here, but the oppressed in a more positive light than the people who they view as oppressing them. So when you attack them, they get to then say, hey, look, we are being physically assaulted by these radical leftists. And basically, so that's the logic behind that. And it's not only just that, it's wrong, because we're supposed to be above that. Because that's the tactics of Trump and his ilk, where they use dogpiling, group by number, or, power by numbers tactics to shut down opposition instead of winning by the ideas. So instead of, punching people, or even really necessarily trying to prevent people from going to these rallies, I would just recommend organizing rallies that occur at similar times to these other events. Like if Milo Yiannopoulos plans an event, I don't know, maybe if you can try, you're probably not going to get Bernie Sanders. If you could, imagine that. Imagine the damage it would do to Milo Yiannopoulos' I'm going to start saying Milo, it's too long. His pride, if you actually did manage to organize a Bernie rally at the same time as him. You think in any age, at any point in time, Milo would ever be able to draw crowds that Bernie can do? No, he can't. And that's going to show him that, no, you're actually really are nothing in the grand scheme of things. You just, in your bubble, you feel like a god. But when it comes to the larger picture, nobody really cares about you. You really are a fad, and Bernie's the actual wave of the future. And that does much more damage to his cause. Okay, let's look at Trump's inauguration. How long did he spend talking about how large the crowd was when it was almost historically small? Why are they doing this? Because if no one's attending the events, it means they really have no support, and that is a challenge to their power. Now, when Bernie or anybody else from the left is able to pull in much bigger crowds, that's what that's going to say to Milo Yiannopoulos. And I think that's a much better usage of your time than protesting it, because the people going to the event aren't going to, pretty much the vast majority of them are not going to change their minds no matter what. When you're if I don't know if these costed money to go to these events, but if they did, if you're spending money to go see a professional troll in real life, you're kind of generally going to be unreachable. That, or you're going for the kicks, which at that point they already have been reached. They're just, spending money to get a laugh for a bit. But for the most part, they're going to be unreachable. So it doesn't really serve that much of a purpose, because you're protesting people who aren't going to care what you have to say. Whereas if you're organizing these other rallies, you're showing them, both Milo and his crowd, that they are not as big and powerful and hell, even as organized as they think they are. So there's that. And another big thing that I really want to talk about, and this is why I think just overall this whole militant opposition to Trump and the alt-right just doesn't work, is because there's this emotional reaction going on where we see Trump and his followers both doing and supporting heinous things. And I understand having a severe emotional reaction to that. The Muslim ban, this racial ethnic religious profiling that echoes what we did during World War II with the Japanese, because apparently we don't learn history lessons around here. Appointing all these corrupt cabinet picks, Betsy DeVos to Secretary of Education. That's insane. Tillerson, Secretary of State. He's doing these horrible things, and I understand having this gut emotional reaction to what he's doing. But the thing is that emotional reaction really isn't going to help here because, it's, as Yoda would say, emotion clouds your judgment that leads to the dark side and all that, Star Warsy nonsense. Because that's what it is. Because let's think about this for a second clearly. All right, let's say we did start a militant opposition to Trump. Why would Trump be at all scared of that? I mean, yes, in the past, the populace has been able to, in some instances, be able to overthrow a government through force. But the thing is, we're not really living in those times. And the way the amount of power government has now is really is nothing like what we've seen before. We're living in an era where a government can kill people without sending in ground troops, drone strikes, they can nuke people. They can literally destroy entire countries with a single bomb. These are major differences from in the past with, for example, the French Revolution, where people had like shitty guns and swords and whatever. Like, they didn't have these weapons of mass destruction. They didn't have the ability to remotely kill people. So he's not going to be afraid of a militant opposition because, in fact, that's exactly what he would want. That's the only thing Trump honestly understands is the concept of violence and brute force. So when you start engaging him on that level, he then gets the ability to say, hey, look, these people are attacking us. Now we can use force back. And guess who is going to win that fight? Guess who's going to win the fight between the leftist protesters and the American government, which is constantly spying on everyone at all times and can drone strike anybody at any point in time that they feel fit to. The government's going to win that fight. When you try to make these arguments that we're gonna militarize and fight back against the Nazis, we're gonna punch these Nazis and we're gonna make them scared of us, you're talking exactly like Republicans who are talking about we don't need gun regulation because we need to protect our guns from the government so we can use it to, fight back against the government, even though a shotgun ain't gonna do shit against a tank or a drone or something that they gonna send to me and kill me. That's what you sound like. So it doesn't work. It's dumb. So we need to stop doing it. We need to stop supporting this. And there's several people on the left that I actually have a lot of respect for. H-Bomber guy, I love you. But you have been supporting this recently. Tommy Avella, same thing with you. But we got to get over this because it's not going to work. We can't have this emotional reaction. We got to actually be thinking about how we're responding. Just look at more organized protests. What Bernie Sanders is doing great work. So is Elizabeth Warren. All this stuff that actually shows corruption and is fighting them on an idea level has been actually working. The Muslim ban is at least for now done. We'll see what happens when it goes to the Supreme Court. But this is stuff that occurs because people go through the law, go through the proper channels, and win on the battle of ideas. And when you win on the battle of ideas, you won permanently. There's no arguing an idea that's success that actually has been pushed into the minds of the people. Whereas there's definitely arguing if you win over brute force because somebody else can get more brute force later. And then you're using the same line of reasoning then. They got the brute force now, so they're the ones that are right. Might equals right. It doesn't work. So we need to get over this and we need to start basically going back to doing work that actually helps, which thankfully a lot of people are still doing. So we gotta get this out of our system, guys. Calm down. I know Captain America punched Nazis, but we don't live in a comic book as much. Well, I don't know if I wish we would, but it would certainly make things more interesting. But yeah, you ain't Captain America.